equations throughout this class. And let me see if you recognize them. This first one is a typo right here. It should be x squared plus y squared equals r squared. And what this is an equation of a circle. If you remember when we graphed circles, they looked like this. You don't have to write this part down. X minus 1 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 25. And if y'all remember, the center of this circle was what? What was the center at? 1, negative 2. You just change these signs. And then the radius was what when we graph circles? Good. So that's where this equation comes from. It's the same thing as a circle. We've used it before. So we're going to use this one. The other one is that tangent equals y over x. We know that because you know that sine and cosine is your x and y value on the unit circle. And we know that tangent is sine over cosine. So we've used this before. And you know when we did converting from polar to rectangular chords, remember when we had to, it was like r theta, and we had to find the x and y value using the fact that x equals r cosine theta and y equals r sine theta. So these are formulas we've used and equations we've used, and we're going to use these to convert between rectangular and polar equations. Now, if we're going from rectangular to polar, and this means we start with a value like, or an equation like x equals 2, or maybe x squared plus y squared equals 1, we're going to change it to polar, which would look like r equals something. And that's important. If we're going from rectangular to polar, it has to be r equals some equation. Has to be that. So we're trying to solve for r when we're going from rectangular to polar. Now if we're going backwards from polar to rectangular, this is what we'll start off with. These are polar because it starts with r or has an r involved, and we want to change it to rectangular. So the things to remember is r squared is the same thing as x squared plus y squared. This is the same thing as r squared. And we know from up here that x is the same as r cosine theta and y is the same as r sine theta. So pretty much we're just replacing these. If it's got an x squared involved, we want to place it with r and vice versa. So for these first ones, we are going from rectangular to polar. Rectangular to polar. So remember, with rectangular to polar, we have to have our equation, the end of it, look like what? R equals something. That's what it has to end up looking like. Okay, so let's use some of our formulas. We know that y is the same thing as what? R what? Sine theta. Good, so I'm replacing y with r sine theta. And now all we have to do is solve for what letter? R. Good, so what's beside r that we need to get rid of? So how can we get rid of it? Divide both sides by sine theta. So we have r equals what? And that's it. We've solved for r. We changed it from a rectangular to a polar equation. Questions on that one? Alright, so what can we replace x with in the next equation? Not just cosine, but r cosine theta equals negative 2. How do we solve for r? Divide by, very good. So my answer would be what? That's it. Questions about those two? Alright, what about this next one? It has x squared plus y squared. What is that the same thing as? R squared. Very good. And where does that come from? This equation right here. X squared plus y squared is the same thing as r squared. So we got r squared equals 1. We just need to solve for what? How do we solve for r in this one? Square root of both sides, right? So we have r equals, very good. Go ahead and do the next one on your own, and then I'll just call on somebody for their answer. right. Katie, what did you get? Or first of all, tell me the first thing you did.
I made it r squared.
Very good. So what's my final answer? Very good. Can we simplify square root of 10? Nope. Very good. Alright, so what did we just do? We went from rectangular to polar. Now we're going backwards. So from polar to rectangular is a little more complicated, and you'll see why in a second. We either have to get x squared plus y squared equals something, x equals something, or y equals something. So there's two important things to remember. The first thing is if you have r equals something, we can't replace r with anything. We don't know what r is, but we know what r squared is, right? R squared is what? X squared plus y squared. So if it's just r, like on number 7 or number 8, how could I turn this r to r squared? Square both sides. Got to square everything. So if it's just r equals something, or r equals a number, that's when you have to square both sides. Then you can replace that r squared with x squared plus y squared. But then if we have r equals something with a trig involved, like number 9, r equals 8 sine theta, then you'd have sine squared, and we don't really know what to replace that with. So if it's r equals something with trig involved, what we're going to do is multiply both sides by r. Multiply both sides by r. So that way we'll have r squared on this side. We can replace that. And then on this side we have 8r sine theta. And we know what r sine theta is. That's what? R sine theta. Y. Very good. Okay. So again, if it's r equals a number, square both sides. If it's r equals trig, multiply both sides by r. Alright, let's get started. So number 7, we have r equals a number. So what are we going to do? Square both sides. That would give us r squared equals what? 25. And now to change it, this is still polar because it's got an r involved. How can I change that r to in terms of x and y? X squared plus y squared equals 25. And that's it. This is an equation of a what? Circle. So it's rectangular form. And that's it. Go ahead and do 8 on your own. Alright, Brendan, what did you get for your final answer?
X squared plus y squared equals 9.
Very good. Y'all have any questions so far? Cool. Alright, next one. This is r equals something with trig involved, a sign, so we're going to multiply both sides by r. So on this side we have 8r sine theta. And there's a reason why I wrote r besides sine theta, so you can remember that r sine theta is the same thing as what? Y. Very good. So what do we replace r squared with? Good. What do we replace this side with? The 8's going to stay there, but it's going to be 8 what? Very good. 8y. Alright, here's where it gets tricky. If you were to graph this, do you know what shape it would be? Looks like it'd be a circle, but what's the problem here? There's the 8y. We just need it to be like one number on that side, right? Do y'all remember how to complete the square? No? Okay, it's not hard to remember. Y'all probably remember after we go over it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get the y's on the same side. So I'm going to subtract 8y from both sides. So then we'll have x squared plus y squared minus 8y, and I'm going to put plus blank, you'll see why in a second, equals 0. I'm going to group the x squared together because it's like terms, and I'm going to group this together. Completing the square means that I'm going to change this to, it's going to be a trinomial because it has 3 terms, but I want it to be a perfect square trinomial. And what that means is this has got to be a perfect square, y squared, and this blank has to be a perfect square. And you'll see why in a minute. Is y squared a perfect square? Yes, it already is. Do y'all remember when completing square, what goes here? How do you find that? Nobody? You just take this middle term, negative 8, divide it by 2, which is what? And then you do what to it? Square it, which is what? Very good. Now, why do we want to do that? Because then if we factor this trinomial right here, using AC Easy, what are factors of 16 that add to be negative 8? Close. Negative 4 and negative 4. Because negative 4 times negative 4 is what? 16. And then when you add them together, negative 8. Y'all with me? Okay, so let's rewrite this in factor form. We're going to leave this x squared the same. This in factor form would be y minus 4 what? Yes, because it's the same thing as y minus 4 times y minus 4. Y'all with me? Okay. But also, if we're doing completing the square, if y'all remember, you have to add this constant term, not to just this side, but also this side. We can't just change one side and not change the other. Otherwise, we'd be changing the equation, right? So what you do to one side, we added 16 to this side, we have to do to what? This side. So we got x squared plus y minus 4 squared equals? Very good. Now this is a circle, right? My center would be at 0, 4. Radius would be 4. Questions on that one? Okay. Let's try one just like it. Alright, number 10. Tell me what to replace r with. Or excuse me, what do we have to do first? Multiply both sides by r. So we'll have r squared equals negative 6 r cosine theta. What is what is r squared the same thing as? Good. And we can replace this r cosine theta with what? Very good. What would be my next step here? Add the 6x, and I'm going to group it with x, so it's a like term. What would be on this side then of the equal sign? 0. I got what you're saying, whoever said that. Alright, we have to complete the square now, so how do I figure out what goes in the blank? Which is 3, and then square it. So what goes in the blank? I also have to add 9 to the other side. Alright, now let's factor this. What factors of 9 add to be 6? 3 and 3, so I can rewrite this as, very good, plus y squared equals what? 9. Is this a rectangular equation? Yes, it's what type of equation? It's a circle. Very good. Questions about that? Alright, now we have number 11 and 12 where it's kind of weird. We have theta equals pi and theta equals pi over 3. We don't know what to replace theta with because we haven't talked about that. But if you go up to here, I put this up here. If you just have theta, then we're going to take tangent of both sides. Tangent of both sides. So, on this side we'd have tan theta. On this side we'd have tan pi. Now I can replace tan theta with something. Because we know tan theta is the same thing as what? How do you find tan on the unit circle? Y over x. Very good. And it's up here, in case you forget. Tangent's the same thing as y over x. And now we have to use our trig knowledge to know what tan pi is. Well, pi is the same thing as what? 180. So if you draw 180, that's right here. And what's this coordinate point? Say it a little bit louder. Good. And if tangent is y over x, that's going to be 0 over negative 1, which is going to be what? Very good. The only thing we have to do is get y by itself, because this is not a rectangular equation. Like if I asked you to graph this, you wouldn't know how, right? But you would know how if it was y equals something or x equals something. So the easiest one to solve for is y, because all we have to do is multiply both sides by what? X. Good. So on this side we would get what? On this side? Very good. Now this is a rectangular equation. And if I asked you to graph this, it'd just be what if you graphed it? Yep, a horizontal line. Everybody good with that one? Alright, last one, and then I'll let you try some more. Yeah. Alright, so what's our first step if it's just theta? Tan on both sides. Alright, we can replace the left side with what? Y over x. We have to find tan of pi over 3. Well, what is pi over 3? What is it? 60 degrees. Good. So if you use the hand trick, 60 degrees is what finger? Ring finger. And tangent is sine over cosine, right? Which side is sine? Thumb side. So it's square root of over square root of. So the answer is what? Very good. Is this a rectangular equation? No, but it would be if I had what? Good. Multiply by x. Because on this side I would get what? Oh, you're talking about this? It doesn't matter. I'd rather you have square root of 3x, because the number in front of x is your what when you're talking about graphing? Your slope. Good. So that's why I want it in front, so you can see that's your slope. Alright, how do y'all feel about these? Comfortable? Almost? Okay. Your homework sheet that you've been working on for like the past week and what you worked on yesterday, at the end there's like 8 problems that deal with this chapter. That's what I want you to work on, so that way I can help you. And then at 10:50 you can pack up. Let me know if you need some help. Remember the homework's due on Friday.